welcome to or welcome back to Temple of Sunshine on YouTube and templeofsunshine.com. I'm super excited for today's topic, as I always am. I am speaking to you about Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself by Dr. Joe Dispenza, but today it's a book review. I'm going to be talking to you about the learnings of it, what I found the most, helpful, and also what I didn't find helpful. I am going to be so honest about this book and how it's changed my life, and finally if you should go and read it. That was a bit of a jumbled up intro, but I'm just really excited to tell you about this book because it has been a journey. Trust me, it's been such a journey. This book has taken me on a roller coaster ride, so I'm excited to talk to you about it. If you're interested in this book, then please do keep watching till the end because I have quite a lot of interesting things to tell you, but I still believe that everybody should have their own perspective of a book. This is just my opinion. Don't get upset if it's one of your favorite books of all time. Let's get straight into the video. Okay, so a lot of you who have been subscribed to me for a while now know that I've been reading this for quite a while, and that's, well, for two reasons. Because one, I'm a slow reader, but two, this book has 4 weeks of meditation in the book. So sort of like at the end chapter, he tells you that now you've got to go off and do 4 weeks of meditation. Each meditation each week is different. Just a little note here that Dr. Joe, being the businessman he is, and I have so much respect for this, I'm not saying this is a bad thing. He references constantly that you can go onto his website and listen to his audios for the meditations. But upon getting to the website, I realised that they are not free. So I want to put my hands up here and say I use the free YouTube ones that other users have put up. It's a really, really nice thing that they've done. So I'm going to link some in the description down below because I really believe in supporting other creators, but also sharing everything that I've done. For those of you who did watch my 21 days of abundance challenge video by Deepak Chopra, I also linked the free resources in that. So I always like to stay candid and tell you guys that, this is what I use, this is what I found. So this is going to be a very honest book review. I had heard about Dr. Joe Dispenza a lot, but this is my first experience with one of his books. I have in the past tried to listen to his lectures and tried to listen to his videos, but I'm going to be really honest with you. Sometimes my brain turns off because I have a very short attention span, and he does like to don't get upset, but he likes to waffle a bit. And I really do love Dr. Joe Dispenza after this book. And I obviously don't want to say anything negative about him, but he does waffle a bit. And I switch off, okay? I switch off. There were times in this book from literally... Okay, you can see I've got loads of little notes in here, so I obviously found value in this book. But there were times where I just felt it was a bit repetitive. But he explains in the book that he needs to be repetitive, especially about the science, because if he doesn't keep repeating himself, it's not going to stay in your sort of short-term memory and then transfer into your long-term memory. And that's really, really important. Like, I remember being back in like biology in A-level, and my biology teacher said that something needs to be read or repeated to you 5 times for it to stick in your long-term, go from your short-term to long-term memory. So I understand why this book is repetitive, and I have great appreciation for that. The first few chapters I loved. I was so excited by the first few chapters because this was the first time I read a book about law of attraction which really got into the science of it. So since I've been trying to find out more about the science of law of attraction, I've gone back to read The Secret and stuff from Dr. Wayne Dyer, and I see that everybody talks about atomic particles, subatomic particles, energetic charge. A lot of books talk about it, but Dr. Joe, being the doctor that he is, scientist that he is, really breaks it down. Like, he talks about literally atoms and how it works, and our, the areas of our brain, like our prefrontal cortex and our hypothalamus and everything, and how it all works. And I loved it. I'm just flicking through to try and find you. Here it is. Try and find you, like, where he talks about electrons, and I've definitely referenced this in previous videos, and waves. So he talks about all sorts of stuff. And he really breaks down law of attraction, because you will, as a fan of law of attraction, I assume that's why you're here, I know you'll encounter a lot of people in your life who are going to tell you that stuff is crazy, it's not real, it's not scientific. You can hit back at them with this sort of knowledge if you feel like you want to argue back. You know, I personally don't have the energy to respond to people anymore who are like, all that stuff is whack. You know, I have a whole business, a whole YouTube based on law of attraction and manifesting, and I don't need to defend myself to anyone. But if you still want to convince the naysayers, then this book will really give you that scientific knowledge. And I love it. I love knowing more about how the universe works. I love knowing about atoms, the makeup of atoms, how we got here, how energy sort of pushes us to act a certain way or not act a certain way. So that's amazing. I really love that part of the book. So he then talks about this really interesting thing of doing to being, and he explains that, you know, we have this ideal of our dream self. So for me, I'm going to put it out there, I want my business, Temple of Sunshine, to grow into a large company where I can employ other people, have an office where we become a bit of like a lifestyle brand. I still make videos, I still do this, you know, YouTubing, but, you know, like I get to have a bigger reach through having more people on the team. That's my dream, right? So he asks you to think about what that person would do and how they would act every day. You know, what are their daily habits? And I had a good think, and I think about this a lot because I'm a very avid visualizer. And when I think about my day, I don't always think about me being the boss of a company, and I don't always think about work. I think about how would I have to change to be confident enough to become that person? So whenever I visualize myself in my dream life, I imagine myself doing yoga, eating well. I imagine lots of laughter and smiles throughout the day, being very close to my staff, having really good relationships, and just being high vibe all day. When I started reading this book, I kind of felt like I was slacking on that front. Like, I'm always a very high vibrational person, but I'd kind of fallen off the wagon. And I also really realized that, so he talks about, the next thing he talks about is the gap. And he has this little diagram that looks like this. You've got one hand at the bottom, one at the top. And at the bottom or the top, I don't remember now, one is how you show the world that you are. So I sort of show myself off as a confident person. I show myself off as someone who's got it together. And we all do this, by the way. And then sometimes deep down, I lack the self-confidence. I lack the self-esteem that I'm going to make my goals happen. And I like to be honest with you guys. There's no point me hiding that side of myself. And usually other sort of spiritual people would call this shadow work, like the what I am inside, what I like to show other people. Dr. Joe doesn't call it shadow work. He calls it the gap. And the gap being, you know, this space in between. And he really believes through meditation we can close that gap and become the person we always want to be and heal our shadow. Then he starts to talk to us about meditation. He goes on for a long time about the science of meditation, how it works, why it works. Essentially, he's trying to tell us that when we meditate and calm our minds and really visualize the future person we want to be, we skip the whole process of thinking about what we want to do, then the action, and then slowly becoming that person, where that's a long sort of process. So let's say I wanted to become really healthy, green juice drinking yogi, which I do. That's the intention. Now, to actually get the action going, I would then have to get my gym leggings on, make a green juice, do that every day, wake up early, commit to the green juice girl lifestyle. And then slowly, number 3, I would become that girl that I want to be, right? What he's trying to say is that meditation skips sort of number 2. And okay, so this is where it starts to get a little tricky for me. So what Dr. Joe is essentially trying to say is that we can skip the kind of doing actions through meditation, and he refers to this study where these piano players had learned to actually play the piano and another group had just visualized it for a long time, and apparently both groups could essentially play the same song when they came out of it. Now, of course, he explains this study so much better than I just did there, but I don't want this video to go on and on. I want to get to the point. So he's saying that through meditation, i.e. visualization and rehearsal during a meditation where our brain waves are slower and more focused, we can just quantum leap and become that person that we really want to be. So where I've told you that my dream CEO, should we say, self, wakes up, does a meditation, does some yoga, has lots of laughter and smiles, is very creative, very high vibe, we essentially can quantum leap into that reality. Now, of course, that reality, and I'm sure with the reality you're trying to manifest, there's lots of variables. So the variable for me is that my business would get to that level of success where I could hire all this staff and have the kind of dream home that I want and whatnot, which is different to today's reality. We have some contrast. And I'm sure you can think of that in your own reality too. Now, this book isn't specifically about manifesting. It's about changing the subconscious beliefs you have about yourself to manifest. So that's where the next section is really great. So the next section, we talk about what our sort of temperament and personality is like. We talk about what we'd like to change about ourselves. And he has a nice little list of things that people essentially like to change about themselves. So this comes in week 2 of the meditation. I'm really speeding through this book because if you're watching this channel, I assume you're already quite into spirituality and manifesting. And week 1 of the meditations was introduction to meditation. I still did it, obviously, as someone who meditates regularly. I still did it because my meditation practices are not very clean or good in the way that I constantly get distracted by my mind. I want to know more about how I should sit, my posture. So I really took week 1 seriously. Week 2 is when he starts to talk about choosing an emotion to unmemorize. So he truly believes that we have emotions that we're very linked to emotionally, and we have a lot of emotional charge around them, especially in our shadow self, that we probably need to change. So example of survival emotions, he's called them, and I'll read a few out. Insecurity, hatred, judgment, victimization, worry, guilt, depression, shame, anxiety, regret, suffering, frustration, fear, greed, and there's more here. The one I chose out of this list in my own experiment was unworthiness. He then asks you to go deeper, and he literally asks you to get in that state of mind. This is where I started to feel really uncomfortable because I am a disciple of Rhonda Byrne, The Secret, all of that, Abraham Hicks, and they tell you, whatever you do, don't let your vibration slip. They literally hammer it into your head that you have to stay high vibration, otherwise you're going to manifest something really bad. So doing this experiment for me is when this is the first time I start to feel uncomfortable. And that's the point. Dr. Joe is trying to make you feel uncomfortable. Dr. Joe is trying to get you in the feeling that holds you back so much and makes you so unhappy in life. By the way, this can be used for so many things. So he said like addictions, breaking addictions to smoking, sugar, victimization. That's also an addiction. He's mentioned that maybe it's for people with anger issues. Like there's so many things you can fix with this meditation, and I believe that 100%. So if you're looking to change your lifestyle or how you are, I would definitely read this book. So for me, what I wanted to change was my, like I've said, unworthiness, and also so it's not that I'm not a healthy person or I struggle with eating healthy and stuff. I did in the past. But for me, there's a much deeper reason to why I can't stick to a healthy lifestyle for too long. And that's because I always am very impatient. But it all comes down to the fact that I always felt really unworthy about my weight and my body and my face growing up. So it was all inextricably linked to unworthiness. My business success, my weight, how I felt about my own self-esteem, self-sabotaging sometimes in my relationship, things like that. It's all unworthiness for me. But maybe for you, it might be one of these others. So then he asks you to pick like 3 things that you really feel when you get in this like feeling of the previous list. So for me, unworthiness. And I picked overwhelmed and lacking, but I also picked desperate, because sometimes what happens is, let's say something doesn't go well in my business. Like let's say I do a campaign and I get nothing out of it. Or let's say I post something and it doesn't get the response I want. Or let's say I get in a little argument with my partner. I then get so overwhelmed at what's happened, and then I desperately try to fix what's happened. So what I'll do is I'll go ham on social media and I'll literally like overdo it with my posts, or try and rectify the fact that something didn't go right. I'll do the same with my relationship. I'll do the same with dieting, literally with my weight. I'll do it with anything. I'll literally do it. I'll obsess over it. And that comes out of desperation, but the desperation's coming out of lack, a lack mindset, which is coming out of unworthiness, which is leading to overwhelmment. So you can see how it's all linked. You can really see that this is quite a raw video from me, actually, where I'm really showing you my shadow self. So I started to do week 2, then I progressed on to week 3. Week 3 is when you really start to shine a light on your negative behaviors. He essentially asks you, when you're in that feeling of that negative emotion that you've picked from the list, and when you're doing those 3 things, so for me, like I said, desperation, lack, overwhelmment, how do you act? I shined a light on the fact that, you know, the examples I just gave you, like when things don't go right, I then try to overcompensate out of desperation and overwhelmment. And then week 4, we do this fun thing called, there's this thing called the change game, and that's either week 3 or week 4. Change game is when you visualize yourself spiraling into negative thoughts and going back to your old self, and then you yell change at yourself. So that's a lot of fun. Imagine you're visualizing, oh, it's me, I'm starting to break my habit and start going back into binge eating or smoking or whatever you're trying to change. I'm arguing with my partner for no reason. You then literally yell at yourself in your visualization meditation and you yell change. And that's quite a fun game. Then week 4 is to visualize your dream self. How do they act? What do they do? What kind of things do they say? You know, daily routine. And then at the end, it's actually really nice. This is what I love about Dr. Joe. He put me through such a whirlwind. He essentially says that now that you've done week 4 and you've visualized yourself and you've thought really like, what do I want to be like? And not just, I want to be a successful CEO. Think about every small component of that. He then asks you to stay in that feeling of being that person and pretend to be that person when you come out the meditation. So you really shouldn't come out your meditation until you feel like the new person. He then says every time you interact with someone or as you go about your day, you must pretend to be that person at all times. You have to literally pretend to be this new person that you've visualized. And that's hard, but I love it. I think that's such a great concept. Now, where I say I went through a bit of a whirlwind was, like I mentioned earlier, I'm a disciple of Rhonda Byrne, Abraham Hicks, and they tell you vibration is everything. When I was going through week 2 and 3, I was very self-critical. I was literally nitpicking at every small thing I would do. And I'd be like, this is your old self. This is what Dr. Joe is telling you to change. I would, every time I slipped up a little, or every time I felt a little insecure or whatever, I would start a bit of a negative self-talk of, this is why you can't succeed. This is literally what you have to change. And then I'd start to do the change game in my own like reality, and I'd start yelling change in my head at myself. And it was making me feel very damaged and broken, like I had a lot to fix. I kind of felt like I had become this person for a few weeks that really needed fixing, and that this Dr. Joe book was like my only savior. I was clinging onto it, and the meditations, and I was getting really in my head. And I did a video a few weeks ago about how I got back into alignment after being a bit crabby with the people I love. You can go check that out if you want. That was actually a really nice sort of revelation that I discovered that day, and I wanted to share it with you guys. But that was the turning point of when I realized I like this book, but it's really focusing on my negatives. It's really focusing on my past. It's really focusing on me. And I think I've made a decision for this point in my life that I do not care for shadow work right now. It is not forever. I will do shadow work when I'm ready and I'm called to it, or maybe I don't need to do it. But for me, shadow work actually gets me more down than it does happy. Like it, you know, traveling back to my past, addressing my inner child, all of that does not work for me in the way that I'm just opening up old wounds. And I know that's the way to heal. I know, I get it. I get it. But for me, it was really getting me down, and I kept falling into a further unworthiness state. I kept like getting really insecure and uncomfortable and reminding myself, oh, this is what you need to change. And the more you focus on what you need to change, the more of it you attract. We know this through the law of attraction. If you focus on what you need to change, i.e., let's say you want to be someone, let's say you are someone who wants to lose weight. If you keep focusing on losing the weight, you'll forever attract more reasons to lose weight. If you focus on debt, you'll forever attract more debt. you need to focus on is bills paid, weight lost, i.e. dream body. You need to focus on, for me, I guess, was just being self-confident. This is when things flipped. I started to simply look up more resources about upping my self-esteem. I still did the Dr. Joe Dispenza program day for day perfectly. What happened was when it got to week 4, I had a lot of positive content being pushed into my mind about high self-esteem, high self-worthiness from, like, let's say Marissa Peer, Deepak Chopra, all my favorites, right? All my usuals who keep me very high vibe. I was reading a lot of Abraham Hicks just to, like, understand why and how I can get out of this negative vibration. And I do blame this book. I'm sorry, I do blame this book. But this is not me telling you not to go out and buy the book. I'm getting to my point. So it got to week 4. And I love the sort of visualization of my dream life. Who would I be? How would I act? Acting as if. And that was amazing. I would come out of those meditations feeling sky high, amazing, so happy. As you do, because you've just visualized your dream self. What I've decided to do over time in week 4 was cut out the sort of week 1 and 2 and mostly focus on week 3. I would keep parts of the change game in there, or I would just skip the change game and move on to week 4 sometimes. And I realized it was working much better for me. The meditations were shorter. I was much less critical of myself because I couldn't say put for, 50 minutes at a time, sometimes an hour with these meditations. And I was focusing on the positive. I was focusing on what I want rather than the lack of what I want and my personality not being up to par. Now, this book is an excellent book. Do not get me wrong. It's an excellent book, and shadow work works for so many people. It just didn't work for me in my moment in time, and that is purely because I'm a disciple of high vibration or nothing. Feel good or no manifestation. And I don't really like to dig up old wounds. I don't really like to dig up parts of my personality that I don't like. But I want to tell you guys that I have improved the unworthiness I used to feel. I have got rid of a lot of that desperation, overwhelmment, and I owe it to Dr. Joe Dispenza. We're taking a positive note at this book purely because it has helped. It put me through a journey I didn't want to go through. But what I did was I tweaked the journey to my own sort of, like, something that works for me. And it came out so much better. Like, I am so happy I read this book. I'm so happy I did the program because I can feel the self-confidence in me. And I'm sure you can notice it in this video if you compare it to some of my older ones, because I am feeling the self-esteem. I'm feeling the self-confidence, not just through Dr. Joe, but other creators that really helped me. Like I said, Deepak Chopra, Wayne Dyer, Marissa P, etc., etc. But I was calling in the need for more self-confidence, and the universe gave it to me, but I took that and ran with it. I didn't focus on how I have to heal myself constantly, because the more I focus on that, the more I'm going to have to heal myself, and I don't like it. So my final review of this book, if you want me to give it a star rating, I will give it a 4 out of 5, purely because it did put me in a bit of a negative mind state. And if you're like me, I wouldn't avoid the book. I would just be very careful to tailor it to your own likings. I wouldn't follow it word for word. However, it's a great book, great meditations. It's really taught me how to meditate better, and it's taught me the science of manifesting, and I absolutely love it. 4.5, I suggest everybody go out and buy this. I'm obviously not sponsored by it. I'm just trying to tell you to be careful that, yes, Dr. Joe might have millions of people who he's healed and cured of, their anxieties and negative beliefs. But Dr. Joe probably tailors that to each of his clients. And with this book, it's kind of a one size fits all, and it didn't work for me. But it did work for me in the end because I tailored it. Message over. If you enjoyed this book review, I know it got really long. If you enjoyed this, then please comment down below, because I've got so much else I want to review. I have so many books I've got through that have really changed my life, and I want to review them. I have actually bought You Are the Placebo by Dr. Joe Dispenza recently, just so I can get more Dr. Joe in. And I'll be reviewing that too. So let me know if you want to hear more about that book. As always, see you next time. If you found this video useful, please like and subscribe, and please forward on to someone who might find this interesting. See ya.